All right. Well, good morning, everyone. You probably just heard that automated message about the recording, or I don't know if maybe I just hear that because I started it. Um, but either way, this talk is being recorded and will be up on Great Tree's YouTube page in the near future. And before I pass it to Anne to introduce Meredith, I'll read a brief statement about the practice of Dhana. In Buddhism, when practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of Dhana Paramita. Dhana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the dharma. Other ways to practice Dhana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. And those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a Dhana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can either do this directly or through Great Tree, and we will pass it on to them. And in the chat, you can find the link for the giving page, as well as an email. So please, if you give, just specify in the email what the Dhana is for, whether it's for Great Tree and Meredith's talk or for Meredith. Yeah, and I'll pass it to you, Anne. Thank you.
Thanks, Trey. Well, we have a first this morning. I mean, we've had talks from lots of places far away, but never from the parking lot of a library. So this morning, this is dedication. Meredith will be speaking to us from the parking lot of the public library on St. Helena's Island, South Carolina. Meredith brings the practice of Zazen to a lifetime of music training, performance, and a 40-year interest in body-mind awareness. Since 1988, she's been a student of the late Tangen Harada Roshi, and traveling to Japan several times for extended practice. With the fabric of Zazen underlying all aspects of her life, Meredith finds it profoundly helpful to study, practice, and teach the principles common to the Alexander technique and the Dharma. So today, Meredith will be talking. Her topic is Zazen on and off the cushion. Meredith.
Thank you. I think the first thing that I would like to start with is, Anne, would you please, we're going to sit another 3 minutes. And if you would, whoever is ringing the bell, I don't know who was doing it.
I left my bell. I'll go get it.
Okay. And what I'd like us to do at the end, when the second bell rings, I would like us to just see if we can't have that sound, have the sense of that sound just touching our eardrums and informing us that you have that sense of hearing. And let that be a cue to move from our sitting to whatever we're going to do next. But it's the bell, instead of it indicating something stopping, I'd like us to literally sense the sound of it and then give a moment to have another breath come in. And then with our exhale, I would just say get up from your cushion with that pause before you just jump up from the cushion when you hear the bell. And then maybe take a little walk around and then come back to your place, and we'll continue from there. So Anne, we're going to have a 3-minute sit here, and I'm not sure you heard what I said, but when you...
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. So here's where I am at the public library. It has a nice little water pond behind it. So that's good. All right. I'm just going to go back into the car because it's kind of noisy out here. One of the reasons why I wanted to, why I titled my talk, what I did was to, I'm going to get this a little higher. There we go. Was to just continue. I know this is not a new concept for everybody, but just to remind us of the fact that Zazen is any moment of our lives, and that sometimes when we've been sitting, the bell goes and then we're doing something else, but the we of we're doing something else is still us. And so I like to think of the bell as just saying, continue. And that's what I was wanting to have you all be reminded of by that short little sit and the bell. Was that, and I'd like this to be kind of an interactive thing, so I'm going to ask questions along the way. Did that bring anything particular to any of you with that reminder? Okay, so I asked Anne to... did you read the list of things, Anne, to bring along? Okay. So what I'd like us to think about for the rest of our, day when we're not sitting is that we're in moving Zazen, whatever it is that we're doing. And I wanted to look at a couple daily activities that we all do, whatever you brought, so that when that one comes up again in your routine, that will just be a little bit of a reminder. Oh yeah, this is me moving Zazen and brushing my hair, or whatever it is. What did everybody bring? Tejo, what did you bring? Is that a teapot?
A teapot. And I've got a cup here.
Okay. Okay, good. So, do you have tea in the teapot or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. What is a teapot without tea in it? Yes, okay. Could you move back a little bit away from your computer? And we are all going to be with you, pouring your cup. You'll need to maybe, can you move the camera down a little more toward the floor or yourself away? Did anyone else bring a teapot and cup? Or a cup? Did you? Okay. So, yeah. Oh, great. So we can all be with Tejo here, and you can we'll go through this all together. Okay, so Tejo, pour yourself a cup of tea. And now you'll need to move back a little farther because we can't see your head. Yeah. Okay, good. That's very good. And then drink some of your tea. Okay, great. Anyone else that has a cup with them, I didn't bring one with me, but please have yourself a sip of tea if anyone has one. Great. So what do you notice? What did you notice about Tejo, if anything, in how she poured the pot of tea into the cup? Did anyone sense anything in themselves observing Tejo pouring the tea?
It looked so smooth. It made me feel like she had done that a lot of times before, especially the way when she got to the very bottom, she kind of turned the teapot and you saw the bottom of the teapot instead of the side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And she waited for all the drips to come out. It was like, really, I felt present with what she was doing because she was, it seemed, doing it so smoothly and I don't know, just, just in tune with what was happening with the teapot in her movements.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that too. I noticed myself at the very end in a kind of dual response. One was of patience, and the other was of wondering, almost as if, did the camera freeze? Because there was such a small, and I couldn't see anything coming into the cup, so I was just, I felt patience with that, but also a little wondering, oh, well, so I that was interesting to me. Just maybe a little impatience as well at the very, very end, thinking, oh, the camera has frozen. Anybody else?
I think it's about the last drop. Till the last drop, I think Teju went all the way through. She didn't kind of leave something little bit. I think she really went all the way till nothing kind of comes out of the.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I noticed that as well, kind of the final little drops and Tejo's skillfulness in getting those drops, I think. And yeah, for me, it gave me a sense of fullness and a sense of like respect for the tea and wanting to get all the drops. And I felt a sense of connection and kind of found myself smiling and then looking around to the other folks in the room, smiling as well. I just felt a sense of connection.
Yes. Well, one thing I would like to point out, as Tejo was lifting the teapot and then pouring, did you notice how upright her torso was, and her arm coming from her back, from her torso. That's what I noticed too. So a sense, I think, of fullness might be what you said, Trey, but just that sense of multi-direction. She was still sort of in the room, even though her arm was outstretched, pouring into the tea. And that's what I observed. I really liked that as well. And that's what I would like all of us to think about when we let's pick our cups up again. But as you lean forward to pick your cups up, really sense your back and the back space behind you as you lean forward to pick your cup up. And then as you bring your cup to you, and you all did this really nicely, so I was glad to see that. Bring the cup to you, to your upright awareness, and then take another sip of tea. But think of how you're bringing that to you rather than you going out to it. Yes, good. So a couple of you made some adjustments that were really nice. You might have seen yourself going to the cup, but you stopped yourself and you paused and then brought the cup to you. So that's really good. That's what the sense of your self, your inner self, kind of being the driver, and then the outer movements coming into that organization. That's really nice. That's true with eating food. I don't know if anyone brought any food, but that same sense of bringing food to you rather than you reaching out. Even as we're looking at our computer here, you can sense the space behind you, sense yourself looking at the computer. And maybe instead of picking up a teacup, now you're going to, if you have a keyboard in front of you, just let your arms and come up and place your hands as though you're going to type on your computer, but with the same sensibility as drinking tea. So you can still sense that your refined touch of picking up a teacup, but this time we're turning our palms over and bringing them onto a keyboard. But that can be still a kind of teaching and a learning of, oh, here are my fingertips on the keyboard, but they're connected to my wrists and my arm, and that goes into my back. That goes into my sit bones on the chair. That goes on, those go into my feet. So your whole self is relating to the keyboard. By way of touching, you can touch, sense that touch, but sense it as a cup of tea. Your multiple directions. What else did people bring with you besides your cup of tea? A pen. Lillian brought a pen. That's a really great one. So I have a pen here too. Let's, if anyone has a pen that you can grab, we can do this together. And I don't know if you are going to write on something. That's also a good, you can grab something. So let's just put our pens down in front of us. Sense yourself where you're sitting. Maybe a breath in. It's time for sensing our breath. Our ribs moving out as we breathe in and draping back down as we breathe out. And sensing ourselves in a space above you, to your sides, behind you, underneath you. And then this activity, which is true of most activities, needs our eyesight. Unless we're blind, then we use other ways of doing things. So let's let our eyes in the socket just move down and glance down to see your pen. If you actually can't see your pen when you roll your eyes down, then let that as your eyes roll down, then let your skull on top of your spine follow that to actually look down a little further if you need to. If you don't need to, then you can just like glance down and see your pen, and then glance up. Like bounce back and up to see your pen. And maybe when you bring your eyes back up, see if they'll land on something interesting. I see a palm tree outside of my car. And then I'm bouncing back to the pen, bouncing over to the right or left. So you're starting to have a sense of your next activity in relation to your whole environment. And then the next time you glance down at your pen, let that be a cue for your arm to move, for your hand to outstretch in preparation for picking up the pen, for letting your fingers be at ease, kind of like from wherever they are, they can flow into, let me just put this down. They can flow into the impulse to pick up the pen, but not the work of picking up the pen. Often we begin picking up the pen before we're at the pen. So those moments of doing that are not necessary, we can pay attention to that. Notice ourselves in our environment and let our fingers simply float onto the pen and then pick up the pen. Yeah. And if we're going to write, then something else needs to happen. So you might need the other hand to bring a piece of paper here. But you only need to shape your hand to that activity at the moment you get to the paper to move it. And then when we're actually at the moment of writing something, notice that. That's kind of dramatic in the scale of looking at things. So what happens to your hand when you actually go to write? How much effort is needed to hold your pen and write? It's a little more than just holding your pen. But is it so much more? Usually not. This is a really good study because we've done this all of our lives and we've done it under stress of school. So it's a good thing to practice writing with the appropriate amount of effort that is needed no less, or the pen will fly out of your hand no more, or your hand will get used unnecessarily, sometimes even cramped. Good. You all look very nice and present with yourselves. It's still like drinking tea. And there's nothing more pleasant than drinking tea. So we could just sort of say all of our activities are a form of drinking tea. So let's put your pen away and come back to the screen, and then let me hear from any of you. Maybe Lillian, what did you notice in that practice?
I would say mostly space, a sense of space, with like the object is in space, I am in space, and I don't know how else to describe it.
Okay. And what about the effort in your hand as you actually wrote?
There was no effort. No
Right.
effort. And the pen actually felt soft.
Yes. Great.
Mm.
Nice. Anybody else have a comment on that?
Yes. Hello, Meredith.
Hi, Chris.
I liked when you said, don't pick it up before you get there. There's a space between when you think about it and when you actually pick it up. So between the resting and the picking up, you shouldn't like pick it up before you get to it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Yes. And the movement that you're using from your lap to the pen, that's just as important. That's just you moving. So it can be another little dance that is, its own movement. And then you come to the pen, and then that's its own movement and effort. And each one requires a different effort. I mean, we could all just do this for a moment. Just like let your hands be kind of like seaweed in water. And see how at ease your fingers can be. Still thinking of yourself in space from your back. You can change the speed. Good. Oh, that looks nice. Great. Anyone else have a comment?
I noticed that, I noticed this when I was picking up my cup and also when I was picking up the pen, that there was kind of this hesitation or something, I don't know how to call it, but like you tell that, it reminded me when I was picking up my cup of that story that you tell about the woman who was an Alexander Technique person, and she had a robbery at her house and they could only find single fingerprints on her cup. And I noticed when I picked up my cup, I touched it in several places before I picked it up. And it made me realize that my mind was not present with it.
Mm-hmm.
My mind was, and the same thing happened with the pen.
Mm-hmm.
And I also noticed with the pen that when I went to write, there was a lot of tension in my fingers.
Okay, great.
That's kind of a habitual way of approaching my write when I write.
Yes. Yes.
But that's very good information for me because it makes me realize that the transitions for me are very abrupt.
Yes. Yes. And if we unlabel them as transitions, then we are just moving, right? So there's not a transition indicates something in between one thing and another. But if we actually are playing with all of our lives every moment, and we're going from one moving Zazen to another moving Zazen, or a less moving Zazen, which is what we might call formal Zazen, then there's not so much of a sense of something in between. It's more like what you were saying, you know, we can flow from pouring the tea to putting the tea down. After you put the teapot down, there's a moment where it takes a lot less effort between putting the pot down and picking the cup up. So it doesn't have to be noticed as in between. It's more just like, oh, here's my hand. It has a little less effort required. And then you get to your teacup, there's a little bit more effort required, but it's, you know, it's just things moving from one to another rather than in between one and another.
It seems like this really, as you were talking, I was thinking about how our mind is kind of multitasking a lot, you know, and that it does make it seem like a lot of different activities when we aren't present with what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Any other comments?
I realize, you know, like that my normal way of doing it is if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking I'm going to, you know, have a sip of tea, is I tense up my arm in my lap before I ever reach it out. That's my normal thing. I hadn't ever been aware of that. So it makes it seem like there are an infinite number of choices, you know, to make in the simplest movement, you know. I mean, infinite number of possibilities of how to do it, which yeah, that's incredible. What an amazing opportunity, you know.
Yeah, that's really great. That reminds me of that quote of, "In the mind of the beginner, there are many possibilities. In the mind of the expert, there are few." And what you said, Anne, in terms of describing your habituated hand or habituated arm, is that with a thought of, you know, picking up a cup, your arm, being the expert that it is, and however many years old that it's been doing its job, there were few possibilities when the expert arm reached out for the cup, you know, or even just before it even moved. Hey, I've got this, you know, I have got this job. I know what to do. But as you rethought it in this context, you noticed what you beautifully said, infinite possibilities of how to do something. And so that's the beginner's arm, if you will, the beginner's arm as, oh, well, my arm could go way out and float down and then pick up, you know, or whatever. But I really liked what you said, and it just reminded me of that saying. It's really true. Yeah. were there any other different activity? I think of one thing that I would like, maybe two other things. I don't have them with me, but I'd like to see if there was anything else someone had brought. Okay. The three things that come to mind, two of them are long time things that we do, except for maybe Tejo these days, is hair brushing. And it's that sense of, again, really noticing your overall coordination, and kind of meeting your hand on your head, brushing your hair. A lot of times, we're like kind of crunching down to do that. So I just wanted to say that, we don't have to practice it, but that's one opportunity to really sense a bigger space and how much work it takes to have the brush in your hand and that kind of thing. So, check that out when you're going through your day. Another one, a really good one, is toothbrushing. We often, are like leaning out drastically, brushing over. Of course, we don't want everything just falling down, so we need to lean over the sink, but we can do that from our hips with a nice open, full torso, and then, you'll be able to do that. So check out hair brushing and toothbrushing. So the one, hopefully, temporary activity that I wanted to talk about is putting on a mask. Right? I have two kinds. Most of the time, I like this kind that goes up and over, but most people use the ear ones. But I've noticed already, I've been playing with this for some years now, unfortunately. But I noticed that if I really am doing it in a hurry, I might be like jutting it out, really causing a lot of neck tension back here. Let me put my hair up here. So I'll be like this. And I've tried to teach myself to actually, put it over my head first without, having to do that. And then getting my chin in here. But I'm thinking as the mask comes up here, I'm actually thinking that impulse of it coming up against my jawbone, I'm not very successful all the time, but I'm trying to let that be an impulse for my spine to lengthen, for my head to up a little bit more off my spine. So when I feel that under my chin, I'm trying to sense my whole spine lengthening all the way down to my tailbone as I pull up on here and then come over here and then make my adjustments on the side. So that, I don't know if you have these kind or not, but if you do, you can practice that. The other kind is the slip over the ears. And again, I'd like to notice myself bringing this to me rather than coming out like that. Because anytime you're doing this, it's tension on your neck. It might be only momentary, but there's lots of moments in our days where we're doing that. And I'm trying to train myself to just accept the mask, and then, so I don't have to tense and undo or, And if I'm in a hurry, and I do it like this, I might go on for some more moments with my neck tense before I realize, oh, well, I don't need to do that. But it happened way back then when I was putting my mask on. Yeah. So I asked Anne, we have, how much time? We have like 15 minutes? No.
Like 13.
Okay. So I asked Anne to have you each bring a chair. Do you each have a chair to sit in? Yeah, okay. I don't have a good way to demonstrate, but this, from sitting to standing, standing to sitting, is another opportunity for us to sense ourselves getting up and down from a chair. And the same patterns are going to be in play where we might throw our head back and, starting even with the thought of standing. So I'd like you to, if you can move your chairs back quite a bit so I can see you going from sitting to standing, that would be helpful. If you can't, it's no big deal, but that would be great. And if you can be, as you're standing and sitting, well, it's okay. If you can be profile to me, let's do it that way. Good. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is just observe yourself going from sitting to standing, and just, you have we've kind of refined our thoughts now. You might have some ideas of how to direct yourself into that activity of sitting, then standing, and see what you can notice while you're talking to yourself about how you're moving. Zazen standing, Zazen sitting. And just do one more time, and then we'll talk. Okay. Good. Yes, great. Let me think how to do this. Let me give you just a little kind of litmus test for yourself, and we'll do it standing and sitting just 2 times. So this time when you stand and sit, what I'd like you to do is clasp your hands and put them right up behind your neck so that the pinky side of your hands is right under that bone, your occiput bone, your skull bone. I want you to have your hands there, and then turn back around and stand and sit twice. Great. Good. Okay, so let me hear from you. what that little litmus test revealed, if anything. For some of you, I think it wouldn't reveal anything, and some of you, I think it would. Anybody?
I think it made you much more aware of your movement, of how you were getting up, with the hands there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big difference between a chair with and without armrest too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
There was more tilting the first time, and with the hands here, it was more straight up and down.
Great. Uh-huh.
I realized that how I would lead with my head. I wasn't aware of that until I could feel my skull moving, and then becoming aware of that, doing it, holding myself in a different way, so that my head wasn't really leading the movement, that
Okay.
my whole body was.
Did that seem to help it feel a little easier?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. And anyone else?
It felt so much better the second time with my hands there. The first time it felt like a snake uncoiling or something. And this just felt so good. So much, more integrated somehow.
Okay, good. Yeah. Anybody else?
I noticed that since I had my toe surgery, I've developed the habit of pushing off when I get up, and having my hands up here, I couldn't do that. And it just made me realize that it's just become a habit that I really don't need to push off like that when I get up.
Okay, that's really a good discovery. Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to run out of time here. I want to try to demonstrate, and this is, this is like a little cue for yourself. And what it does is that it inhibits you from throwing your skull back on your spine when you get up. And when you don't do that, your top joint organization, whole spine, actually has the ability to give your whole organization or allow your whole organization to come in. If you're stopping that here, it stops everything. This is the kind of kingpin ease. If this is easy, much of everything else is. So let me see here. I'll just leave that open. So I don't have a chair, but it's okay. And you can practice this without a chair too, because sitting to standing is really a squat, right? But then you just run into the chair bottom, and there you are seated. So if I'm not paying attention, and I'm coming down into the seat this way, you see, it's not just the back of my head. That whole pattern shortens me here, over lengthens me here, and that's taking, that is covering over my ability to use my whole spine, my whole back, all the big muscles, all the deep muscles. So if I am stopping that from happening here, it stops that whole pattern that happens. And so I can, if you do this several times and you notice a pressure on your knuckles, it means that you're throwing your head back, and that's a really good thing to know that you're doing. And then you can take your hands away and rethink that. So in order to come forward and down, I'm thinking back and up, leaving my neck alone, and then coming into that. So I think that you all got that, and I just wanted to just explain what's happening there when you're not doing that. And so practice it with that, but then you want to be able to sense that you can direct yourself to not do that when you're sitting and standing. There's so many opportunities during the day to do that. So I guess the last thing I would like to say is that this is how we can be doing Zazen off the cushion. That's what I meant. Any time. And if you'll notice that throughout all these explorations that we've done together this morning, it's been a process of noticing what we don't need, not what we do need, right? Everything that we talked about was an undoing of something, an undoing of Anne's expert arm, an undoing of multiple mind of Tejo picking the cup up, the pen, this sitting and standing. Also at the very beginning, when the bell rang again and we didn't jump up, we took another breath, we let the sound come in. That's all of those things is remembering to undo, not do. And so that's what I'd like to point out, because in Zen practice we always say accept things as they are. And I think when we get to exploring things in a refined way like this, what we find is that when we get out of our way, there's something really graceful and beautiful about us as we are. And accepting our patterns of tension and monkey mind and everything, that's also accepting things as they are and not pushing those away. But in this study, it's just a practice of undoing. So that's what I wanted to that's kind of why I wanted to title my talk, Zazen on and off the cushion. Any questions or any further comments before we leave?
Well, thank you. When you were talking before about tea, and Tejo was drinking tea, what came to my mind is what you are inviting us to do. Like there's tea ceremony, and every movement can be a ceremony. It can be a sitting ceremony. It can be, and I really like the idea, of that attention and that practice, and how when we bring it back, and then we can call it a dance or a ceremony, but really, yes, it's extending it to every moment and every gesture, a dance of a gesture ceremony. So it's very beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. Okay, well, it's 11:01, and that means we can continue with our next dance.
Ceremony.
Back to Merit.
Ceremony. Yes.
Tejo, can
Yeah.
we just mention that tomorrow is family Zen, and it's about the hungry ghosts tomorrow at 10:30 to 11:30 with Tejo, family Zazen.
And for those, if anybody's interested, the Tuesday study group has started again. And it's at 3:30. Well, Zazen is at 3:30 on Tuesday, and the study group is from 4 to 5. And we're reading Start Where You Are by Pema Chodron. Are we on chapter 13? Anybody here that knows that? And you weren't there last time. I think we're on chapter 13, but you can write me and ask me. May the merit of this practice benefit all beings, and bring peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meredith.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. That's dedication.